Let's get geeked. Let's get geeked. Hey guys, welcome to Geeks Are Easy. I'm your girl Live Action Animation, and today we are talking Star Trek. I am here with my fellow geek girl and Star Trek enthusiast, Allison. Hey Allison.
Hey, how's it going?
Say hello to the world.
Hello world.
Now, the reason why I wanted to do this video, and I talked to you a little bit about it, is because I was wondering, like your Star Wars, Star Trek has become this huge phenomenon. It's just recently had its, 50th anniversary?
50th anniversary this year, yeah.
Yeah, and it got me thinking, like, when I grew up, I knew what Star Trek was, you know? I knew who Captain Kirk was, I knew who Spock was, you know, Sulu, everybody, you know? But I didn't really watch it, but I knew, like, because, you know, Uhura, she kissed Captain Kirk on national television, and that was a huge thing. So growing up, I remember watching Next Generation. That was my thing.
As most people our age did.
Yeah.
I think, you know, our age, we tend to be more about the TNG and later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, couldn't tell you what happened in the Next Generation, but I watched it a lot. Didn't watch Deep Space Nine or anything about that, but I know who these characters are.
Yeah.
I have an emotional connection to these characters, and I'm not as, you know, big of a fan as you are, per se. So the question I want to pose to you is, why Star Trek? Like, why do you think it became such a cult classic?
I think, you know, you said the word cult classic. I would say that Star Trek's a lot bigger than cult.
Ooh, nice.
So Star Trek is probably the most expansive universe, and it set the tone for all fandoms.
Oh, wow.
It actually created fandom culture as we know it today. So it's one of the biggest fandoms in the world. So I don't know if I'd call it a cult classic, but I would call it a sci-fi classic.
But it wasn't even on television for that long. It literally had how many seasons?
The original series gotta fact check this. The original series, I believe, had 3 seasons. Started in 1967. But we're talking about 30 seasons of television.
Yes.
From 1967 until now, we were talking about 13 films.
Yeah.
We're talking about 700 episodes. So I don't know if there is any other, I guess, fandom related or like universe other, like the Star Trek multiverse is so varied, and it is more expansive probably than anything else that's out there. I think it did have a dormancy for a little while when we didn't have any Star Trek on television, and now that we have the reboot, it's experiencing kind of a renaissance.
Yeah,
so it's coming right back, and everybody's getting back into it. And we're about to have 2017. CBS is going to come out with Star Trek Discovery.
Oh, nice.
So we're about to have Star Trek back on television for the first time in many years.
And it's a full force, like, you know, reconciliation. Like, they're coming back, like with the like you said, with the reboot. I feel like people have basically charged their Star Trek battery, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And like people like me who, you like I said, like aren't as like, yeah, Star Trek, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm still like, I love Star Trek, and like don't even know, you know what I mean? Like the movies for me, I was sitting there like, oh my God, this is so great. Oh my God, it's Spock again. Oh my God, Captain Kirk, Chris Pine, he's doing great. You know what I mean? And when I saw Leonard friggin' Nimoy the first time in the first reboot Star Trek movie, I flipped my shit out. I flipped out. I was like, it's the original Spock, you know. So with that being said, and I think it's justified that Star Trek would have a nice, you know, reboot and become just as big as it was, you know, in the 70s, you know what I mean? Like, and
well, and the fandom's really kept it alive, and I think something really smart that JJ has done with the reboot, although many fans, we'll get into this later, you know, kind of the rift amongst the fandom. But one of the smart things that he did was try to keep the continuity there, which is why you see Leonard Nimoy in the new films, and you know, you see a little bit of continuity from the original series of the universe.
To be, you know?
Because you know, it really, there's so much to play with it's such a vast universe, and it is so interesting. It would be a shame to throw all of that away.
And at the same time, too, we don't know what happens in space. Like, anything could happen in these worlds that we don't know. Like, you know, time travel is probably absolutely possible in this realm that we're living in when it comes to Star Trek. Now, getting to
lots of time travel plots. Not all of them make sense, but lots of time travel.
Does it need to make sense though? It's time travel. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm gonna go back in time, but I'm gonna see myself as a white person living in, you know, Manhattan. And, you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things.
It's
Multiverses
good.
are great. I just love multiverses just in any kind of aspect, because it really does give you so much to play with, whether you have the smallest brain capacity to play with, or like, you know what? I'm gonna have a universe that all shoes are gonna talk. You know what I mean? It's just gonna be.
Or I'm gonna go back in time to save some whales.
Yeah, exactly. It'll work. It'll work.
one of the highest rated movies of the Star Trek franchise. So like, good on Star Trek for taking a weird risk.
Hey, and it worked. So
it worked.
Take that.
I love that movie. Voyage Home.
So getting into rifts and differences, when you look at all the different genres of Star Trek, your Deep Space Nine, your Next Generations, what makes the divide? I noticed there's a big divide. It's like, I'm a Deep Space Niner. I'm, you know, Next Generation girl. Oh, I'm a classic girl, you know. And it's literally like battles. Like, no, Deep Space Nine is the best in the world. No, Picard is better than, you know.
Picard v. Kirk is a big battle there. But I think that's a generational divide. So I would say in Star Trek you have, first, in terms of the television series, you have a lot of smaller generational divides. So you have people, and I'm going to give a shout out to the wonderful documentary Trekkies, if you want to learn more about the Star Trek fandom, how it created fandoms as we modernly know them today. Check out Trekkies, it's really great. It was actually created by a former cast member.
Oh, cool.
They got Denise Crosby, I believe. Fact check me. She created, an entire, I think Trekkies and Trekkies 2, and it explores a lot of these issues. So, you know, I'm borrowing a little bit, but there is a divide between the original series, which is generally the people that watched the original series when they were growing up are baby boomers. Right. People that are now probably in their 50s and 60s. And we're growing up in the 60s in a very tumultuous time. And that's why I think, things like Uhura were so, I think people don't give original series enough credit.
Oh my God.
It was such a tumultuous time in terms of civil rights in the 60s. And
they were rebels. They were rebels for the time,
What was really interesting is in the original series, Gene Roddenberry wanted, number one, the first officer to be played by a woman, and he actually cast his wife, Majel, as that person, and he sent the pilot off and they said no. And that's how we ended up with the kind of dynamic that we have now. But they still tried to push the envelope in a lot of different ways.
I mean, having a black woman on national television, primetime television, with an all-white cast.
Not being a servant or, in a
woman of power. And who was very intelligent and knew exactly what she was doing, and was quick on the gun a lot of the times. And for me, having those sorts of women being present in things like this,
totally,
that's such a huge franchise, is really, really great. Just tell me a little bit about what you kind of think that divide comes from. Like, where do you think?
Yeah, so as if we kind of cut this together,
talking about,
which we will, but we're talking about kind of the generational divides that there are. So you've got your original series people, those are our baby boomers, which I feel like we talked about a little bit, and then you have those that came in years and years later, way into the 80s. So we're talking about one of the original reboots.
Yeah.
You know, rebooting was not a thing until probably Star Trek started the trend.
Yeah.
So we had The Next Generation, and The Next Generation took a little while to get its footing, but I feel like it has permeated the cultural consciousness. Like when you talk about, Captain Picard, and you talk about the Enterprise, most people are going to draw back to Next Generation, and I feel like that's where we get a lot of the modern context. We also get a lot more complexity because it lasted for a lot more seasons. So the Next Generation created a divide a little bit in the fandom because if you didn't know already, the original series is the group of people and the group of fans that we pay homage to. Yes. Those are the people that built the foundations of the fandom cultures that we see today.
Yeah.
They created conventions, they created meetups, they created websites and fan fiction. Those are the people that, you know, we really have to pay deference to. But there is somewhat of a divide between people that are into the original series versus the Next Generation.
Right.
And the way that the documentary Trekkies, which I've already talked about, will divide that is into Trekkies and Trekkers. So Trekkers are people that are fans of the original series.
Right.
They feel more active in the space exploration kind of fandom and fantasy. Whereas Trekkies, I would say, also feel the same way, but they've gotten a kind of a bad rap. And are a little bit looked down upon by people that have, you know, started with the original series.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, because you guys are the OG fandom, so we're just gonna, like...
You gave us...
Yeah, you gave us Star Trek, so, like,
Yeah.
thank you. And then you have the subsequent iterations of Star Trek. So you've got a little bit of DS9 that would overlap with Next Generation. Deep Space Nine is interesting because it's not an exploration mission.
Right.
So up until now, all we've had is the Starship Enterprise. Its main mission is to go out, seek new life forms and new civilizations, and to boldly go where no man has gone before, and or woman. But that was its primary mission, whereas with Deep Space Nine, we're seeing the Federation as it operates almost as a
base, basically.
Yeah, and as a government, you know, really as a peacekeeping force.
Right.
And that's a lot harder than just going out and making new contact, because you can essentially have your, you know, alien of the week and then leave them and go out and do something else and have new adventures.
Right.
So there's a lot more fluidity there. Deep Space Nine has a huge overarching conflict, which is hard to ignore, and I credit a lot of that, the Cardassians versus the Bajorans. I credit a lot of that with Ronald D. Moore, and people that are familiar with Ronald D. Moore will know him from Battlestar Galactica, which is kind of like if Star Trek were edgier and more character-driven. There are a lot of similarities there. But yeah, I think people that are fans of Deep Space Nine really appreciate that kind of complexity, and I do think it was underappreciated when it came out.
Yeah.
And more people are getting into it now that Netflix is a thing.
Netflix is a thing.
It is totally a thing, guys.
Thank you, Netflix.
And then you have Voyager. Voyager is more of a return to form. So Voyager is more of that exploration kind of vibe. You've got a starship, you have Catherine Janeway at the helm, which I'm a real big fan about. All of my Orange is the New Black fans, you're gonna know who I'm talking about. Red, that's my Catherine Janeway. That's my favorite captain. But you know, it has some of its missteps, and then you have an even bigger rift, I would say, between the fandom and Enterprise. People really keep Enterprise at arm's length. It feels, especially the first season or so, really rubbed Trek fans the wrong way. It's a prequel, and in a lot of ways we were scarred from the Star Wars prequel, so we were like not into it. Like we were just like, I don't want to do this. It does. I think it does have value,
Right.
Especially when you talk about some of the races that you encounter,
right.
and the aliens that you encounter, and things like that. It's an interesting series, but it takes a little while to get started. But I would say the main rift, the big rift between Trek fans, the reboot.
Oh, and that's the next thing I wanted to get into, is just basically talking about what you think, because I personally enjoy the movies, because I think more so because I'm not so into it and into the background of it. I just like the nostalgia of it all, and the fact that I used to watch it a little bit when I was younger, and so I really enjoyed them. And I think that Star Trek is one of those things, like I was saying, like that deserves that reboot. And I think that these actors really are diving into this whole world and these characters and really taking care of them. That I really, really appreciate that, because a lot of times you want people, they're doing it for the money, they're doing it for the name, but you can tell when an actor really takes the time to be like, okay, let me figure out who Captain Picard is. Let me figure out who Spock really is. Let me give them more than just what people know. It's like, okay, we know who Captain Picard is. Now what's this level of Captain Picard? And this level, and this level. And I think the reboots are giving us new levels of these characters that we've grown to love, and know. So what, you being an avid fan, like, how do you feel about these reboots?
So I think you've touched on a couple of things that are interesting. So first, there is the difference between the Star Trek movies, which there's been 13 of them.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. We're talking about like 700 episodes of television and 13 movies. So we're talking about like a pretty expansive fandom, and a multiverse essentially. But when you're talking about kind of the films and the kind of nostalgia rush that you feel for them, I think that's what the films are the best at. They are best for kind of the casual fan that jumps in and out, may watch a couple of episodes and likes the universe and wants to see it explored on a big screen. And that's why I loved the 2009 reboot. I really did. And I think a lot of fans had pretty strong reactions, but I would say if we're going by like the Rotten Tomatoes score, and or just my general feelings about the fandom, most people erred on the side of liking it, just barely, because all fandoms are pretty strict with their requirements. But I would say that 2009 reboot, especially J.J. Abrams really knows how to craft character-driven scenes, and you see like Kirk running through the halls with like swollen hands, and he's like talking to Bones, and it's like the perfect kind of mishmash of things that you want from a Star Trek movie. The straw that broke the fandom's back was definitely Into Darkness. Everybody hated it. And I think the problem is... You need a moment?
Oh, because we talked about it earlier.
We've already talked about this before, but I mean,
I'm sorry, guys.
It's bad.
They don't like it. I enjoyed it. I mean, what are you gonna do?
I mean, if you've never seen The Wrath of Khan,
Spock had emotions.
So it's essentially taking the character developments of Wrath of Khan and flipping them on their head. From a character perspective, that doesn't work for me because I know Kirk and Spock too well. And it just seems so wildly out of character for like Spock, of all people, even when he has intense emotions, to like repeatedly deck someone in the face multiple times, and also to scream Khan in like a really cheesy way. So I think fans were pretty mixed. There's a lot of logical loopholes you have to go through with Into Darkness, like why does Khan have magic blood that can now cure all diseases and or bring people from the dead? Are we now living in a society where people are basically gods because we can just farm blood from Khan?
I get you, but it's space. Okay, you know what I'm saying? This is space. This is multiverses. It's the final frontier.
It's the final frontier.
Okay.
Anything can happen.
I mean, anything can happen. Let me tell you something. If Kirk could go around screwing real aliens and that be okay, why can't there be some magic alien blood? I'm just saying.
I mean, maybe there is.
Oh,
Maybe there is.
there we go.
Maybe there is.
There we go. Clearly there is, because in the second Star Wars, in the second Star Wars, we are
You're
rolling
gonna get
back.
so much heat for that every time you do it.
I don't give a damn. Anyway, clearly in the second Star Trek, there's some healing alien blood.
There is, and that also flies in the face of a lot of what we know about the Star Trek universe, just in terms of Vulcan being able to eradicate humanity of many diseases.
There we go.
So it's
a full circle.
It's a problem. Okay. Also, like, why did he put his people in like the torpedoes? And I mean, there are just so many. Like, why? I don't get it. I do love Benedict Cumberbatch in a Star Trek movie, though.
He's good.
So I'm willing to overlook some of it, even if it's, you know.
Yeah, Doctor Strange.
And I'm like, yeah. I'm willing to overlook it, even though it's kind of whitewashing it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I want my Monteblanc. What can I say? But yeah, like Into Darkness really was the thing that broke the fandom.
Yeah.
And it, I think the overwhelming majority of Star Trek fans, I think it was actually a pretty well-received movie. Decently. I don't think it was like anybody thought it was the most amazing thing, but the fandom didn't receive it very well, and that's your core of people.
Yeah.
So JJ and Justin Lin, JJ was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm gonna go over to Star Wars, which is my like real fandom.
Bail out. Okay.
So you guys put me on Star Trek, but really what I want to be doing is science fantasy. So I'm gonna like peace.
Kanye Schwartz.
I'm gonna go over here, and I'm gonna hand you guys over to a real Trekkie, Justin Lin, who you might know from the Fast and the Furious franchise, which might seem like an ill fit, but actually works out pretty well. He's a big Trekkie.
Did work. Oh my God.
And he enlisted Simon Pegg to help him write. So
Brilliant writing, by the way.
really good. I thought Star Trek Beyond was really underrated. I'm surprised that it performed well. I'm not surprised. Star Trek movies tend to underperform what they expect. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fandom. It is so big and diverse, and a lot of times they're trying to make this movie for a general audience that would be, I think, better served if they just went straight for the fandom. Like, I can count 10 million times how a two-parter TNG episode was better than a Star Trek movie. And it's just because it really maintains the tone of the series. And you know, it really does bring more complexity. But that's television, that's not movies, so we gotta roid it up. We gotta put in some action.
You gotta put a little steroids
You gotta put some sexy men in there. You got a little bit of Chris Pine, Carl Urban, you know, you gotta have that stuff
beef
happen.
it up. It's gotta be cakey.
But I have to say, I think Star Trek Beyond was a nice return to form for the 50th anniversary. I really liked it. I think most Trek fans thought it was much better than Into Darkness, and embraced it as kind of the new Star Trek.
Yeah,
So
I think it's good. I think it's good that they rebooted it. I think they're doing a really good job. I think the actors are coming into their own as these characters, which I can appreciate a lot, because these are such, like, careful characters. Like, they're very fragile. It's like you will, you know, get death threats, you know what I'm saying?
they're very specific.
Yeah, they're very,
they've already been very much
it's like
established.
Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
it's like Star Wars, it's like, you know, Supernatural, it's like anything Harry Potter. Can you imagine, because they talked about, I'm sorry, really quick, they talked about changing the kids from Harry Potter because they didn't want them to get too old. Could you imagine how much that franchise would have flopped if they did that?
Yep.
So, you know, take care of these characters is what we're trying to say. But there is another franchise, right? Voyager?
Yes, so we didn't get to talk about Voyager very much. Voyager is the second to last in the television series. And then we have Enterprise.
Okay. Wow. Yes, all right.
People really don't like Enterprise, and I can get why. Again, it had a shaky start. But we also have the 2017 Star Trek Discovery, which is about to happen on CBS All Access. It's headed by Brian Fuller of Pushing Daisies and Hannibal fame. Any fans out there? I am. So I'm really excited to see what Brian Fuller brings to the franchise. Mostly I'm ready for him to gay it up real good. And I think that will happen.
Yes!
But 2017 spring, I think they actually had to push back until May of next year, which I'm not mad about. I want them to take their time. But we're definitely stoked about that.
So, as a person who's not very affluent, if that's the right word, in all things Star Trek.
Maybe knowledgeable about all things Star Trek, yeah.
And I didn't say I was a dictionary, you guys. But like people who are just now kind of finding Star Wars through the reboot.
Star Trek.
Why do I keep fucking it? Okay, we're gonna cut that. We're gonna cut it because I keep damn doing it.
So wait, we're gonna take like 1 second and talk about how Star Wars has so much more like cultural clout. Like, what happened to Star Trek? We're bigger. We've got a bigger universe. Like, why are everybody trying to tell us that we Star Wars? But Star Wars, it's science fantasy. It's not.
Are taking over your trekking.
I'm trekking.
People are walking along.
I'm trekking.
And the wars are coming up on you.
I don't want a war.
Sorry.
Okay. And
Sorry. Okay.
scene.
So.
Yeah.
Woo! As someone who isn't as knowledgeable on Star Trek
Yes.
as you are, and they're just kind of finding it through the reboots,
Right.
which they very well should because they're really good. What would you say to them if they say, "Hey, you know, Allison, I want to get into it a little bit more. Where should I start? Like, where should we begin?"
Well, I think if you started with the Star Trek reboot movies, the best place for you to start probably would be the Next Generation movies. I am not a big fan of Star Trek Generations, but it is the only
honey.
It is the only movie that has both the original cast from the original series, and it also has the TNG cast kind of crossing over. So if you want to be a purist like me and watch everything, then start there. If you want to start with the good one, I would say go ahead and skip to First Contact. That will give you a lot of information, especially about the Borg, which I feel like are the big bad, especially in Star Trek Next Generation, which is the most accessible of the Star Trek franchises. And go from there. If you like what you see in First Contact, I would say start with season 3, please. I mean, if you're a purist like me, you can try and trudge through 1 and 2. I'm always gonna soldier through, but there's a lot of turkeys in there. So if you want to just get to the good stuff, season 3 of Next Generation is a great place to start.
Cool.
Gets you enough of character development and also introduction to some of the main alien people and also the big bads, the villains. So you'll get a lot of that there.
Awesome. Well, there you go. That's where you start. That's where I'll probably start. Because I feel like I need to watch a little bit more. So, okay. So, I'm going to ask you out there, what is your favorite Star Trek franchise of like the entire series? Drop it in the comment box below. If there's any questions that you have for Allison, where can they reach you at?
You can get me at QIO.tumblr.com. I'm always posting things, mostly shit posting about Star Trek. So if you're into shit posts about Star Trek, hit me up.
Cool.
And I've got an ask box and or a suggestion box if you want me to like post something that you have. I'm totally down.
Sweet, and we'll have her back for more discussions. And you can also catch us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Geeks Are Easy. Well, my friends, that's it for the day. We'll see you next time. Same geek time, same Geek YouTube channel. Peace. Bam!
Bam!
Yeah!
We did it! 5 hours later.
Let's get geeked. But let me ask you guys out there, what's your favorite Star Wars franchise in the entire series?
Star Trek franchise.
Son of a
responded to you in Klingon with a thank you?
I was like, I'm sure that's some form of alien language. And I have no idea. I'm gonna roll with it. I was gonna put back, it's so good. Does that not go what you're talking about?
All right, so are we gonna promo this, or are we just gonna go for it?
Okay. Hey guys. Live Action Nation. I'm here with Allison and Leslie, part of the GGB community, and since we are that's Sherlock and back, I believe.
Yep.
And since we are talking today about Star Wars,
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
She's already drunk.
I may have had a couple of mimosas before the shooting, so it's gonna be fun. Star Trek.
We've got some Romulan ale type shots that I have created and that everyone is deeply afraid of.
Yeah, I mean, Romulan ale is known to be pretty wicked. It's not allowed in the Federation.
Y'all ready for this?
No.
I probably cannot even take the whole shot.
Well, you can sip it. It's all right.
Sip it.
All right, it's a sipper, but we'll at least do a cheers.
Yes.
All right.
Cheers.
To absent friends.
Yay! Oh, Steven. Oh my God, he's hardcore. You can't see him, guys. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's nice.
Ooh.
Isn't that nice? I mean, it's strong, but it's not like super duper strong.
I am such a lightweight.
It's all right. You can just keep that for later as a prop. So when
Well, my mischief is managed.
Put that down. Mischief is managed. Mischief is ongoing. Your mischief is still happening.
Well, like, would you have ever thought, like, watching Bill and Ted, that Keanu Reeves would end up being, like, John Wick or Neo?
Point blank period. Are walking off cliffs. Like, I don't need that kind of get up and go. You know, I'm not trying to get up and go die. I'm trying to get up and, like, be productive.